Hey, and welcome to another edition of Try Knoxville. Mike Roberts along for the ride again, and this time a good friend of mine, Perry Bell, coming on board, and we wanted to bring Perry in here for a couple of reasons. One, we have an announcement to make later on at the end of the show, but also most people that live in Knoxville have been familiar with his writing style for several years, but a lot of people really don't know where you came from because you've kind of been here most of your life, but you weren't born in Knoxville, though.
No, I was actually born in West Virginia, so I take a little bit of pride because there aren't a lot of West Virginia people here in Iowa. So I'd still take some pride in being from West Virginia, even though I really don't know much about it because we moved to Iowa when I was 2 or 3 years old.
Okay. What brought you guys to Iowa?
Mom's family was from Iowa,
Okay.
and so we came back here. She delivered me, and she didn't get to see her mom, who passed away back when her mom passed away, and then I was born a few months later.
Okay.
And Mom worked she actually worked in West Virginia for the person who delivered me, my doctor, and he was my babysitter. He volunteered to be my babysitter, which is pretty unique.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So what, you guys moved to Knoxville because of her family being back in this area, and she came in the VA then, worked out the VA when she came here, or where'd she work at?
No, she worked at the Knoxville
Hospital.
Community Hospital.
That's right, yeah. She worked with my grandmother.
Yeah, she was recruited here by Dr. Mader, Dr. McClung,
Sure.
Dr. McKeever, and worked with people like Dr. Deskamp, and there's too many to name, but
Yeah. Came in the Collins Hospital days, back when it was down there where City Hall is now.
right. And then Mom got a chance to work in what is currently, at that time, was the new hospital,
Right.
and she was the night nurse. So she was an RN.
Yeah.
So she was in charge in the evenings, and she would work what would call the graveyard shift, 11 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning. She would rush to get through her reports for the morning crew, so she would be able to take my sister Kathy and I to school.
Sure. I think that's where they ran into each other. My grandmother worked nights mainly too, and she was an OB all the time. So my grandma always used to brag that she held every baby that came through there first before their mothers did. So kind of a neat deal. Growing up as a kid, and you played sports. You did football and you did wrestling. Anything else? Baseball?
Yeah, football, wrestling, baseball. I think that was it for high school. And then I played a lot of recreation softball.
I don't even want to talk about your recreation softball. It's a story we'll tell here in a little bit because I also played. I thought I was playing recreation softball when I was getting lessons. I'll tell that story later on. I don't know if you remember this lesson or not, but we'll talk about it a little bit. You had a excellent career, what I would consider excellent career, in wrestling and in football. You played on the undefeated Knoxville Panthers and went 9-0 in 1970. What was that?
1975, Knoxville's last undefeated football team.
Right.
And it was a very talented class, and I'm not really bragging. Our closest game was 24-0.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a lot of depth, and the junior class was pretty talented too, and so we had back-to-back classes, and that's the key to success of any team is if you have two very talented classes back-to-back, you'll find success in sports.
Right. Marv Sloan coached back then, right?
Marv Sloan was our head coach, and he was a pleasure to play for. He was kind of tough, but he was a pleasure.
He was
kind of
tough. I like that, kind of tough. I'll tell my Marv Sloan story because you were in the system back then too. Perry and I, actually, first time we ever met, you were my assistant coach when I was playing freshman football, and Marv at that time was assistant in the varsity program, and I'm not sure if he maybe was head coach of JV, but he worked with a lot of JV back then too, I think. But he always watched the freshmen coming up. And I can't remember if you were there that day or not. I think you were because you assisted with Tonda, and then Wallace was head coach back then. And I never will forget. Marv came over. Well, we were practicing with JV, I think it was, or sophomores, whatever it was. And I was lined up on the line. He kept saying, "Roberts, you're doing it wrong. Roberts, you're doing it wrong." So I was nose tackle, And finally, he took center position. I think it was who was it? Robinson, I think, was center. And he pushed him out of the way, and he goes down and goes, all right, now come at me. And he didn't have pads on or nothing. I'm thinking, this is my opportunity. And boy, was I dead wrong that was my opportunity.
Yeah, Marv.
He taught old school. He taught the tough stuff.
Yeah, and he had a lot of respect because of his knowledge and his success as a coach.
Yeah. You guys went 9-0 that year, and I never will forget this story. I was 9 years old, to be honest with you, so I didn't learn the story till later on in life. But you guys, that was it. That was the end of the season. You never got a shot.
Yeah, the playoff system wasn't right. Now they take district champions and normally runner-ups, even though they've been tweaking the system the last few years too. But the system just wasn't right. We were actually ranked third in the state in our class,
right? And
still didn't make the playoffs. A team that had lost one, maybe even two games out of Cedar Rapids made the playoffs because of the point system. And yeah, we did everything possible. We just kind of demolished everybody we played, and
just the way the rules and the system was back then. The sad thing about stuff like that is you can't get it back. I mean, it's history. It's over with, and you look back on that kind of thing. What was it like? I always compare the Try Knoxville program of enticing people to come here. What was it like growing up back in the 70s in high school as a kid in Knoxville? I mean, something made you stick around because you've been here all your life.
Yeah, my mom brought us to town. I think the year was 1965.
Right.
And my dad was a veteran at the VA hospital, and so that brought us to town. Mom actually ran into some of the right people when we first got here, and people were very, very helpful. People like Jack and Bonnie Crook.
Right.
People like Jeff and Darlene Klein. Matter of fact, their daughter used to walk me to school, and because we lived on Main Street and they were one block over, and so
Karen.
Yes, and Darlene still talks about those days. And
this is the first time I've ever heard this story, and we've known each other for decades now. Karen, her grandmother, and my grandfather are brother and sister.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we may have known each other back then and not even known it. Probably not, but
yeah.
So sticking around Knoxville, you went not too far away to college as well, right across the river.
Yeah, I was kind of a homebody person. I wanted to make sure I was, close to my mom because she's technically a single parent because of Dad being at the hospital. So I wanted to do what I could to help out, and she always would do the laundry on the weekend, so that made it easier. And then I've always had a love for games, even back before starting into the business as a sports editor. I
made a comment about Central already, but I also forgot to talk about your wrestling career. I brought it up, but you had what I consider an excellent wrestling career also back in high school.
Yeah, I wrestled at right around the weight of 230 pounds. Heavyweight was over 185 back then. And there was no limit on the heavyweights. There are limits nowadays on how much a heavyweight can weigh, but back then I wrestled several guys that were, I think I counted at least 3, maybe 4 that were over 300 pounds. And to give up 70 pounds up to 100 pounds on a couple of them, you learn not to get underneath those guys and stay underneath too long.
No doubt. You had a record also out here. I think Mike Cunningham told me about this record once. But what's the official story on that? Because there seems to be a discrepancy in what should have been and what turned out to be with the time on your record pin.
Yeah, I actually pinned a kid from Albia here in a meet here at Knoxville.
Right.
And the official pin time was 17 seconds.
Sure.
And at that time, it was the school record for fastest pin in school history. However, Mike Cunningham, who was my defensive line coach for football, he happened to be running the clock that night. And after the match was over, he told me, he says, Perry, he goes, that should have been anywhere from a 7 to a 9 second pin. He goes, the official is a little slow getting down there, but he goes, then you repinned him again.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive. And again, it doesn't stand now, but that's quick. That is very quick. What was your record back then? Remember?
Yeah, my senior year, and just numbers kind of stick in my head.
Right.
I was 21 wins, 5 losses, and a tie.
Wow.
14 of those were pins, and at that time, that was the most pins in a single season. Also, now we didn't wrestle as many matches as what's done nowadays.
Right.
Back in the day, when you pin half the people you wrestle, that's not too bad.
I'm gonna say, what about Central College? And how'd you end up? I mean, you wanted to stay local, obviously, and you kind of stay close to home. But what'd you do over there as far as any sports or anything over there?
Yeah, I wrestled for Central one. When I went to college, I was an official for wrestling, also an official for baseball and softball, and that was my freshman year of college. I was doing that type stuff.
Right.
And so I was doing officiating for wrestling, and I believe it was my junior year, the heavyweight wrestler on the Central team got injured playing football.
Right.
So the wrestling coach came to my room to recruit me because he heard that when I was a freshman, we had intramural wrestling at the college, and I pinned everybody I wrestled in intramurals, including the strongest kid on the football team who was a senior, and an assistant coach on the football team who was actually, more of an adult than I was as a freshman.
Did you think people took advantage? Not, I don't say took you for granted, I should say, because you're soft spoken. You're not the party animal. You're not the guy you see on TV that's smashing cans on his head as a football player or a wrestler. You're just kind of Perry Bell. I mean, do you think they like, I could take advantage of this guy and I can pin him real quick?
I guess I really don't know what other people thought about me. I think I earned my own respect.
They learned quickly when it came to wrestling, though.
Yeah.
I would have to agree with that. What year did you graduate Central?
Central would have been, I actually went an extra 2 terms, so because I declared a major late.
Okay.
So it was March of '81.
Majored in what?
Being able to teach and coach.
Okay.
And with business and physical education.
Always aim down that sports deal. March of '81. You and I met in probably late August, early September of 1980, because you were assistant coach as freshman. We talked about that. Was that your first actual coaching gig, if you will, for Knoxville?
Yeah. Originally, I was going to help in the Newton program with. I can't think of the coach's name now, but he was a legendary coach at Newton, and he gave me their playbook and all that.
I can't remember neither because I think Ed took over after him. Ed Erkenbright did after him, and I can't remember the guy's name now.
Right.
Yeah.
But then things got changed, and they sent me back here to Knoxville. So then I worked with Mike Cunningham,
right?
Senior Mike Cunningham,
right?
And and that helped me. It also helped me reduce spending gas money because I could stay local and do stuff, and so that worked out well.
So you went down the road of teaching, you went down the road of coaching, and somehow or another you ended up in a newspaper. 1982.
March of 1981.
81.
And
how in the world did that happen?
Well, it's kind of a strange story. Again, sports has always led me down the path of life.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Edwards and Joyce Edwards, his wife, were the owners of the newspaper back in those days. And Bob was signing his 2 boys up to play Babe Ruth baseball, and I was the president of the Babe Ruth League when I was a freshman at college.
Sure.
And I happened to see the Knoxville paper, the Journal Express, and I said, that ad you have in there this week, that's me. And he says, I'm not sure what you're talking about. And I said, well, yeah, you're looking for somebody to do sports. And I said, I'm about as well-rounded a sports person as you can find. He said, well, did you take a writing class in college? Technically, the answer was no, but Alan Fernie, when he was a teacher at Knoxville,
right.
He was my writing teacher, and boy, I just loved his class and it brought out the best of my writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bob got some samples from me, and technically I've never filled out any papers. I was just kind of hired on the spot, and I said, well, what do I need to do? And he goes, that interview we just had just to talk is good enough for me.
Really?
Right.
That's pretty impressive. 1981, you started with those guys, and you ended up 14 years later. We're going to fast forward now. You hired me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And believe it or not, he wasn't drinking that day. He don't drink, period, but he wasn't drinking that day. You were looking for a shooter back then, a photographer, just go out and cover some games, because you always, from the word go, have been involved heavily in sports, but you covered Knoxville, Twin Cedars, Melcher Dallas, Pleasantville, Pella Christian, and Central College. Did I miss anybody?
No, that was quite a load.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of used my background of you, assistant coach, if you will. We knew each other through media because I'd worked at the radio station prior to that. But I went up there and I wanted to get in your business a little bit, and so you hired me as a photographer, and we just talked about this before we went on the air, and the games I went to and the money it was, and how I learned to do the darkroom and develop and everything else from Jack Crook, another name that you brought up. It's funny you mentioned Jack, because your mom and obviously the rest of your family had dealings with Jack and Bonnie. And then Jack was the publisher when I got hired up there by you. And it was always fun working with those guys, and a lot of knowledge. He when you came to town and when I was growing up, he was in clothing sales, but he was always a salesman.
Right.
And it was always customer service with him.
Yeah.
And it was pretty impressive how he translated that from clothing over to newspaper as well, because it was still always about customer service.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's still nowadays, if you treat people well, that's what it's all about.
Right.
That's what life's all about.
You and I have had some roller coaster adventures in the newspaper business, all the way from racing to going out to Colorado one time. That's a trip all by itself that we'll tell some other story someday. But it's the neat thing that we've been able to always end up in the same room, same time, whether we're working for each other, with each other, or opposite companies. And as for recent events, I finally got you back now where we're even, because you hired me back in 1995. And this is the announcement I'm going to tell everybody right now, and there'll be more of this story in next week's Marion County Tribune. But Perry Bell has joined the Marion County Tribune team as of July 1st.
And I owe you a lot of gratitude for bringing me aboard. So thank you for bringing my career to make it run a little longer.
Well, yeah, I mean, you still got at least 30 more years in. We were talking about this before, too. I'm going to say it. I'm sorry. You're on your 5th decade, buddy.
Well,
it sounds terrible that way, I know, but
I guess it all started back in 81.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd rather say I did, or I'm on into my 40th year. It sounds a little better than 5 decades.
Yeah, you're starting 5 decades, though. I mean, the 2020 is here. It's not a bad career, my friend, because as of not just recently, you got a media award with baseball back in the early 2000s. You've been inducted into Hall of Fames in high school. Also inducted, was it last year?
Yeah.
Over at the Knoxville Raceway Hall of Fame. You got more Hall of Fame stuff going on too. I mean, it's kind of neat to watch you get these awards, and I know you don't look as, this is why I'm here. This is not what I'm after. But, I mean, that shows a lot of respect that you're getting these awards right now.
Yeah. Last year I was given one of the 2 highest awards by the Iowa Newspaper Association, which really meant a lot to me. And then, to get the Ralph Capitani Award at the Knoxville Raceway Banquet last year, following the induction into the Hall of Fame.
Right.
That's like more than one person can ever ask for. And then Pleasantville kind of honored me with being their Grand Marshal. And, just so many good things have happened that, boy, I don't know how I can repay all these people.
Well, it's not necessarily stuff you were after, but it's neat to see you getting your just due. And And to be honest, old friend, after 5 decades, you I got to throw that just one more time.
40 years.
40 years. I know it. Let's tell everybody what we're planning on doing with the Marion County Tribune, though. You're going to start July 1st. And again, believe it or not, you're going to be doing sports.
What year do I start on that?
I like that. That was good. You'll be starting here in a couple weeks, I should say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of 2020. About the only good thing that's really been happening in 2020 right now. So, but you're going to be in sports. You're also going to be doing some sales for us as well. I don't want to say you're lightening your load because I know you don't know how to lighten a load at all. But you're going to be covering mainly Knoxville, Pleasantville, Melcher, Dallas, Twin Cedars area.
Yeah. Not
saying that we won't go across and cover some Pella stuff, but it won't be in the newspaper section of it at all. But again, I always say you're going to lighten your load, but you're not. You'll figure out ways of. You're a workaholic, my friend. You really are, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying you really go after it.
Yeah, 40 hours have never defined my life, and probably never will.
Yeah, maybe 40 hours at night and then 40 hours during the daytime, maybe. But
yeah, 40 hours of the week. You hope to get some sleep, but I have sleep issues, so that doesn't happen either.
For people that's again tuning in the show for the Try Knoxville portion of it, let's get back to one question that I think you're more than capable of answering, because you have interviewed many, many, many people, just not even locally but nationally. The ones you get to interview, not all of them have been in Knoxville, but the majority have. And it seems like they've always had compliments about Knoxville. What's the selling point that I'm going to ask you of why people should try Knoxville, not just visiting, but as in moving here? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I guess actually if you experience it, you'll run into the people that make this community what it is. And that includes the school districts, the business district, your next door neighbor, just Knoxville is just made up of a lot of talented people at all different ages. It just kind of meshes, and when there's trouble in life, people come together to help one another, and that's the case in other small communities too. But Knoxville really has it going on.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%, and we keep things going. Well, again, my friend, we're running out of time here, but I can't thank you enough for giving me my opportunity back in 1995 to get in the newspaper business. And no thanks needed here. I'm glad to be working with you again. I know you said your thank you, but I'm just tickled pink you're back on board.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to be coming back and keeping newspaper career alive. Newspapers, some places are dying because that's mismanagement. But I know you're doing it right and you're local, and this paper will make it, and it will be one of the best papers around.
The one thing I've enjoyed about this, and the one thing I've tried to carry on, is the two things I've learned. And one of them was from Jack Crook, is customer service. Be honest, be open, own the thing. If there is a mistake, you own the mistake. And the one thing I learned from you is how to do what I consider the best way of putting a newspaper together. You taught me layout. You taught me how things were done. You taught me stories. And I hope we're getting there. And I know we are. Our success is we're going to start every week starting July 3rd, Marion County Express. You can go on to our MarionCountyTribune.com website to subscribe to that. And you'll be getting some more stuff in the mail as well. We got to wrap this thing up, and we'll have to do this again sometime and tell the rest of the stories, as Paul Harvey used to say. Once the statutes of limitations ran out, I don't know. Thanks, Perry.
Thanks, Mike.
That's going to wrap it up for this edition of Try Knoxville. Hey, make sure you guys tune into all the old Try Knoxville podcasts at TryKnoxville.com. We'll see you next time.